Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The Whitmore University Library stood like a cathedral of knowledge against the October sky, its Gothic spires reaching toward heaven as if seeking divine inspiration for all the stories held within its walls. On this particular afternoon, as thunder rolled across the campus like the voice of an ancient god, 52-year-old Esm Gray walked through the reference section with the measured steps of someone who had made peace with solitude. For 15 years, Esma had been the head librarian at Whitmore. Her silver-streaked auburn hair was always pulled back in a neat chignon, her reading glasses perpetually perched on the end of her nose like a scholarly crown. She wore cardigans the color of autumn leaves and carried herself with the quiet dignity of a woman who had learned to find fulfillment in books rather than in the complexities of human relationships. The storm outside seemed to mirror something restless within the library walls that day. Perhaps it was the way the light filtered through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the ancient oak tables. Or perhaps it was simply the electricity in the air, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up and whispers of change. As Esmer rounded the corner into the rare books section, her sanctuary within a sanctuary, she stopped short. There, at the mahogany table beneath the window depicting St. Catherine of Alexandria, sat a young woman with wild, curly black hair that seemed to have a life of its own. She was bent over one of the library's most precious possessions, a first edition collection of Audubon's Birds of America. But she wasn't reading it, she was sketching it. Excuse me, Esme's voice carried the authority of someone unaccustomed to having her rules challenged. Those books are not to be handled without permission, and certainly not to be reproduced. The young woman looked up, and Esme felt something shift in her chest, a flutter, like the wings of a startled bird. The girl couldn't have been more than 19 or 20, with eyes the color of storm clouds and skin that held the glow of someone who spent time outdoors. Her clothes were paint-splattered and bohemian, layers of flowing fabrics that spoke of an artistic soul. "Oh, the girl," sighed, her voice carrying a slight rasp that suggested she'd been concentrating for hours. "I'm so sorry. I'm Harper Walker, and in Professor Martinez's ornithological illustration class. I was hoping to study the brushwork techniques in these plates. I promise I'm being incredibly careful." Esma approached the table, her professional instincts warring with something else, an inexplicable draw to this vibrant creature who seemed to bring color into her carefully ordered world. She looked down at Harper's sketchbook and felt her breath catch. The drawing was exquisite, a faithful reproduction of Audubon's Baltimore Oriole, but with a modern fluidity that breathed new life into the classical work. "You're quite talented," Esme admitted, adjusting her glasses, "but these books require special handling permits. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave." Harper's face fell, but she nodded respectfully. "Of course, I understand. I should have asked first." She began carefully packing her art supplies, her movements graceful despite her obvious disappointment. As she stood to leave, Harper paused. "Miss Gray, Esme Gray. Miss Gray, if I were to apply for the proper permits, would it be possible to study these illustrations for my thesis project? I'm working on a series about the intersection of scientific observation and artistic interpretation in nature studies." There was something in the way Harper spoke about her work, a passion that reminded Esme of her own love for rare books and forgotten stories. But Esme had learned long ago to keep professional boundaries firmly in place. You would need to submit a formal request through the university's special collections department. The process typically takes 4 to 6 weeks. Harper's smile was like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. "Thank you. I'll do that today." As the young woman left, her footsteps echoing in the vast space, Esme found herself watching until Harper disappeared around the corner. Only then did she notice that the storm outside had intensified, rain now lashing against the windows with renewed fury, and in the silence that followed, Esme couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted in her carefully constructed world. 3 weeks later, Harper's permit application crossed Esme's desk. It was thorough, professionally written, and accompanied by a portfolio of her artwork that took Esme's breath away. The young woman had a gift, there was no denying it. Her illustrations captured not just the physical beauty of birds, but something deeper, their essence, their spirit, the way they moved through the world with a freedom that most humans could only dream of. Esme approved the permit immediately. Harper returned on a Tuesday morning, when the library was particularly quiet. She had tied her curls back in a colorful silk scarf, and wore a vintage dress that looked like it had been plucked from a 1960s art student's wardrobe. She carried a leather satchel filled with art supplies and moved through the library with the reverent care of someone who understood the sacred nature of knowledge. "Thank you for approving my application so quickly," Harper said as Esme led her to the rare book section. "I know these permits usually take much longer." "Your portfolio was compelling," Esme replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Your work shows real promise." Over the following weeks, Harper became a regular presence in the rare book section. She worked quietly, respectfully, often for hours at a time. And despite herself, Esme found reasons to check on her progress. She would tell herself it was purely professional, ensuring the books were being handled properly. But the truth was more complicated. There was something magnetic about Harper's presence. The way she would bite her lower lip when concentrating, how she would hold her breath when turning a particularly delicate page, the soft humming that escaped her lips when she was deeply absorbed in her work. "Miss Gray," Harper said one afternoon, looking up from a particularly stunning illustration of a great blue heron, "would you like to see what I've been working on?" Esmond approached, maintaining what she considered an appropriate professional distance. Harper's sketchbook was open to a page that made Esme's heart skip. It wasn't just a copy of Audubon's work, it was an interpretation, a conversation between classical technique and modern vision. The heron stood in water that seemed to ripple with life, its reflection creating a perfect mirror of grace. "It's beautiful," Esmond whispered, forgetting for a moment to maintain her professional composure. "Thank you. I've been thinking about how Audubon saw these birds, not just as specimens, but as living poetry. Each one tells a story about freedom, about the courage to soar." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the decades between them seemed to disappear. Harper was looking at her with an intensity that made Esme's pulse quicken. "Miss Gray," Harper said softly, "would you perhaps like to have coffee sometime? I'd love to hear more about your work with rare books, and maybe talk about other things, too." The question hung in the air like a prayer. Esme felt her chest tighten, felt the walls around her heart trembling. But then reality crashed back in: the age difference, the professional boundaries, the impossibility of it all. "I don't think that would be appropriate, Miss Walker," Esme said, her voice cooler than she intended. "I maintain strict professional relationships with all library patrons." Harper's face flushed, but she nodded with dignity. "Of course, I apologize if I overstepped." That was the first rejection. As Harper returned to her work, Esme walked back to her office, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone in the library could hear it. She closed her door, sat at her desk, and put her head in her hands. What was wrong with her? Harper was a child, well, not a child, but young enough to be her daughter. The very thought was scandalous. She was a respected member of the university community, a woman who had built her reputation on propriety and professionalism, but even as she told herself these things, she couldn't forget the way Harper had looked at her, as if she saw something in Esme that Esme herself had forgotten was there. Winter passed with Harper continuing her research, their interactions remaining strictly professional. But spring brought changes that even Esme couldn't ignore. The university decided to commission a mural for the new environmental sciences building, and Harper had won the competitive bid with a proposal for a piece celebrating the local bird population. "Miss Gray," Harper approached Esme's desk one warm April morning, "I was wondering if you might consider being a consultant on my mural project. Your knowledge of ornithological texts is extraordinary, and I'd love your input on historical accuracy." Esme looked up from her cataloging work to find Harper glowing with excitement, her curls catching the morning light streaming through the library windows. She wore a sundress the color of daffodils, and Esme couldn't help but notice how the months had matured her. She carried herself with more confidence now, spoke with the authority of someone who had found her artistic voice. "I appreciate the offer," Esme said carefully, "but I'm not sure I'm qualified to advise on artistic matters." "Oh, but you are," Harper insisted, pulling up a chair uninvited but somehow not unwelcome. "You understand these birds in ways that most people don't. When you talk about the books, about the historical context, your eyes light up. You see the stories behind the science." It was true. Esme had always been drawn to the narratives hidden in academic texts, the the human drama behind great discoveries, the passion that drove explorers and naturalists to risk everything for knowledge. I could pay you, Harper continued. The university provided a budget for consultants. Esme found herself wavering. The project did sound fascinating, and Harper's enthusiasm was infectious. We could meet in the library, Harper added quickly, sensing Esme's hesitation. During business hours. Completely professional. Against her better judgment, Esme agreed. Their collaboration began that very afternoon. Harper spread her preliminary sketches across one of the large reading tables, and Esme found herself drawn into the creative process despite her reservations. Harper's vision was ambitious, a sweeping mural that would follow the migration patterns of local bird species through the seasons, incorporating both scientific accuracy and artistic beauty. I want viewers to feel what Audubon felt, Harper explained, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. That sense of wonder, of being connected to something larger than themselves. As they worked together over the following weeks, Esme discovered that Harper was not just talented but brilliant. She had read extensively, could discuss ornithological history with the depth of a graduate student, and had insights that often surprised Esme with their sophistication. You know, Harper said one afternoon as they debated the positioning of a cardinal in the spring section of the mural. I've always wondered what drew you to rare books. Was it the history? The preservation aspect? Esme paused, considering the question more deeply than she usually allowed herself to. I suppose it was the permanence, she said finally. Books survive when people don't. They carry forward the thoughts, the dreams, the discoveries of those who came before us. There's something sacred about being a guardian of that knowledge. Harper was quiet for a long moment, studying Esme with those storm-gray eyes. That's beautiful. You're like a keeper of stories. Their gazes held, and Esme felt that familiar flutter in her chest. The way Harper looked at her with such genuine admiration, such warmth made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Miss Gray, Harper said softly, I know you turned me down before, but would you consider having dinner? With me? Not coffee this time? Somewhere nice. I'd love to continue our conversation in a more relaxed setting. The second rejection came easier than the first, though it still felt like tearing something inside herself. Miss Walker, I think you're a remarkable young woman, but the age difference between us, it simply wouldn't be appropriate. Harper's smile was sad but understanding. I get it. I just thought. I wish age were just a number when two people connect the way we do. Asterisk, as Harper's mural took shape over the late spring and early summer, so did the undeniable connection between the two women. They spent hours together, their conversations ranging from ornithology to literature to philosophy. Esme found herself looking forward to their sessions with an anticipation that both thrilled and terrified her. Harper was unlike anyone Esme had ever known. She was intellectually curious but not pretentious, passionate but not naive. She had an old soul wrapped in a young body, and a way of seeing the world that made Esme question her own carefully constructed boundaries. I've been thinking about what you said about books carrying forward dreams, Harper said one afternoon as they worked on the summer section of the mural. I think that's what I'm trying to do with art, capture something essential and pass it. And what would you want to pass on? Esme, genuinely curious. Harper was quiet for a moment, her pencil poised over her sketchpad. The beauty of connection, she said finally. The way two beings can recognize each other across time, across difference, across all the things that supposedly separate us. Esme felt her pulse quicken. There was something in Harper's tone, in the way she wasn't quite looking at her, that suggested layers of meaning. The third rejection came during a particularly intense work session in July. They had been debating the placement of a pair of mourning doves when Harper suddenly set down her pencil and looked directly at Esme. I have to say this, Harper announced, her voice steady despite the vulnerability in her eyes. I'm falling in love with you, Miss Gray. I know you think I'm too young, and maybe I am, but my feelings are real. They're not going away. Would you please consider giving us a chance? Esme's heart shattered and soared simultaneously. The directness of Harper's confession, the courage it must have taken, left her breathless. Harper, she said, using the young woman's first name for the first time. You don't understand what you're saying. I'm old enough to be your mother. People would talk. Your career could be damaged. My position at the university? I don't care about any of that. Harper interrupted. I care about the way you make me feel like I'm home. The way your face lights up when you talk about something you love. The way you see beauty in old things, forgotten things. I care about the fact that when I'm with you, I feel like the best version of myself. The words hung between them like a bridge Esma was too afraid to cross. I'm sorry, Esma whispered. I can't. August brought the completion of Harper's mural, and with it, a bittersweet sense of ending. The piece was magnificent, a sweeping celebration of avian life that captured both scientific precision and artistic soul. The university was thrilled, and Harper's reputation as an artist was firmly established, but their professional relationship was coming to a close. And Esma found herself dreading the inevitable goodbye. I wanted to thank you, Harper said on their last official workday, carefully packing up her art supplies. This project wouldn't have been the same without your knowledge and insights. You did all the real work, Esma replied. I just pointed you towards some research materials. You did so much more than that. Harper's voice was soft, intimate. You helped me understand that art isn't just about technique, it's about seeing with your heart as well as your eyes. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both aware that something precious was ending. Miss Gray, Esma, Harper said, trying out the name like a prayer. I know I've asked before, and I know what your answer will be, but I have to try one more time. Would you consider, not a date exactly, but would you come to the mural unveiling reception with me as my guest? Esma closed her eyes, fighting against the longing that threatened to overwhelm her. The idea of standing beside Harper as she celebrated this achievement of sharing in her triumph was almost irresistibly appealing. I'll be there, Esma said carefully, as a representative of the library, to celebrate the completion of a successful collaboration. Harper's smile was bittersweet, of course, professional to the end. That was the fourth rejection, though it felt more like a surrender. Asterisk, the mural unveiling reception took place on a warm September evening, as the university campus glowed golden in the setting sun. Esma arrived at the environmental sciences building wearing her best dress, a deep blue silk that brought out her eyes and made her feel more confident than she had in years. The mural was breathtaking in its completed form. Harper had created something that was simultaneously intimate and grand, scientifically accurate and emotionally resonant. Visitors stood before it in obvious awe, many lingering to study the intricate details. Esma found Harper surrounded by admirers, professors, students, members of the community, all eager to congratulate her on her achievement. She looked radiant, in a flowing dress that seemed to have been painted with autumn colors, her hair crowned with a delicate circlet of flowers that some admirer had clearly given her. But when Harper's eyes found Esme's across the crowded room, her entire face transformed. She excused herself from her admirers and made her way through the crowd with determined grace. You came, Harper said, slightly breathless. I said I would, Esme replied, trying to maintain professional composure while her heart hammered against her ribs. What do you think of the finished piece? Esme looked up at the mural, truly looked at it, and felt tears prick her eyes. It was more than art. It was a love letter to the natural world, a celebration of beauty and connection and the courage to soar. It's extraordinary, she whispered. You've created something that will inspire people for generations. Harper stepped closer, close enough that Esme could smell her perfume, something light and floral that suited her perfectly. There's something I need to tell you, Harper said quietly. Something I incorporated into the mural that no one else will understand. She led Esmond to the spring section of the painting, to a small corner where a pair of birds sat on a flowering branch, one older, more mature, with silver-touched feathers, and one younger, vibrant with the colors of new life. They're both female, Harper said softly, and they're looking at each other like they're seeing home. Esme's breath caught. The symbolism was unmistakable, tender, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Harper, she began, but the young woman shook her head. I'm not asking for anything, Harper said. I just wanted you to know that you've been my inspiration. For this project, for my art, for ... everything. The crowd was beginning to thin, the official part of the reception winding down. Harper was pulled away by her professor for photographs, and Esme found herself standing alone before the mural, staring at those two birds and feeling something crack open inside her chest. Later, as the last guests departed and the building grew quiet, Harper approached one final time. I know this is our ending, she said. I know you've made your choice, and I respect it. But I want you to know that loving you, even if it's unrequited, has made me a better artist and a better person. She moved as if to leave, then turned. Back one last time. If you ever change your mind, if you ever decide that maybe love is worth the risk, you know where to find me. And then she was gone, leaving Esme alone with the mural and the weight of all her unspoken feelings. Autumn passed into winter, and Esme fell into the rhythm of her old life, but something had fundamentally changed. The library felt different without Harper's presence, quieter, grayer, less alive. Esme found herself walking past the environmental sciences building on her way to work, stealing glances at the mural through the windows. Remembering, she threw herself into her work with renewed intensity, cataloging rare acquisitions, organizing special exhibitions, maintaining the careful order of her professional world. But in quiet moments, and there were many of them, she found her thoughts drifting to Harper. December brought news that Harper had been accepted into a prestigious graduate program in wildlife illustration at a university on the West Coast. The opportunity of a lifetime, everyone said. A chance to study with masters of the field. Esme heard the news secondhand, through the academic gossip network, and felt something break inside her. Harper was leaving. Their paths, which had intersected so beautifully and painfully, were diverging permanently. On a cold January evening, as snow fell softly against the library windows, Esme made a decision that surprised even herself. She drove across town to the small gallery where Harper was having her farewell exhibition, a collection of paintings inspired by local birdlife, including studies for the university mural. The gallery was crowded with Harper's friends and admirers. The warm light and cheerful conversation, a stark contrast to the winter night outside. Esme almost turned around and left, but something kept her feet moving forward. She found Harper standing before a painting of a cardinal, the same one they had debated placing in the mural months earlier. Harper looked older somehow, more sophisticated, but she couldn't have changed that much in a few months. She wore a simple black dress that emphasized her artistic credentials, her curls tamed into an elegant updo. Esme, Harper's voice was soft with surprise. You came. I wanted to see your work, Esme replied. Though they both knew it was more than that. They moved through the gallery together, Harper explaining the inspiration behind each piece. Her art had evolved even in these few months. There was a depth. Now, a complexity that spoke of experience and growth. This one is my favorite, Harper said, stopping before a painting that made Esme's breath catch. It was a pair of swans on a misty lake, one silver gray, one pure white. Their necks curved toward each other in perfect symmetry. It's called recognition, Harper said quietly. About the moment when two souls see themselves in each other. They stood in silence, the weight of all their unspoken words hanging between them. I leave for California tomorrow, Harper said finally. I heard. Congratulations, it's a wonderful opportunity. It is. Harper's smile was brave but sad. A new chapter. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Esme found herself lingering. She wasn't ready to say goodbye, not yet, not like this. Harper, she said as the young woman began collecting her things. Could we talk? Somewhere private? Hope flickered in Harper's gray eyes, quickly tempered by caution. Of course. They found a quiet coffee shop that stayed open late, settling into a corner booth away from the handful of other customers. For a long moment, neither spoke, the weight of months of unresolved feelings settling between them. I owe you an apology, Esme said finally. Harper looked up, surprised. For what? For being afraid. For letting fear make decisions that should have been made by my heart. Harper's coffee cup stilled halfway to her lips. Esme. Please, let me say this. Esme's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her own mug, seeking warmth. You asked me 5 times, in 5 different ways, to give us a chance, and 5 times I said no. Not because I didn't want to, God knows I wanted to, but because I was terrified. Terrified of what? Of judgment? Of gossip? Of ruining your future or my reputation? Of being seen as someone who robbed the cradle or corrupted innocence? Esme's voice cracked slightly. But mostly I was terrified of how much I cared for you. Harper reached across the table, her fingers barely touching Esme's, and now I realized that I was so busy protecting us from imaginary consequences that I ignored the very real consequence of losing you. Esme looked up, meeting Harper's eyes directly. I know it's too late. I know you're leaving, and you should. It's an amazing opportunity. But I needed you to know that my rejections were never about you not being enough. They were about me, being too afraid to be brave. Tears had started to fall silently down Harper's cheeks. Do you know what the worst part was? She whispered. Not the rejections themselves, but the feeling that I was some kind of immature infatuation you had to endure. Like my feelings weren't real or valid because I was young. Your feelings were the most real thing in my life, Esme said fiercely. The way you looked at me, talked to me, saw me, no one had ever done that before. You made me feel alive in a way I hadn't since I was your age. That's what scared me most of all. They sat in silence for a moment, a coffee shop's soft jazz, music filling the space between their words. I leave tomorrow, Harper said again, her voice barely audible. I know. But, Harper continued, her fingers tightening slightly on Esme's, the program doesn't start until fall. I could defer. If I had a reason to stay, Esme felt her heart stop, then start again with painful intensity. Harper, I can't ask you to give up your dreams for me. You're not asking, I'm offering. Harper's eyes were bright with possibility and fear. But I need to know, if I stay, if we try this, are you ready to be brave? Really brave? Because I can't go through this again. Esme can't love someone who's going to keep me at arm's length because she's afraid of what people might think. The question hung between them like a bridge one that would either connect their separate worlds or collapse under the weight of Esme's continued fear. Esme thought about the past 6 months, about the emptiness in her carefully ordered life, about the way Harper's laughter had filled spaces in her heart she hadn't even known were hollow. She thought about the mural, about those two birds looking at each other like they'd found home. Yes, she whispered. I'm ready to be brave. Spring returned to Whitmore University with unusual warmth, as if the earth itself were celebrating new beginnings. Harper had deferred her graduate program for a year, using the time to establish herself as a freelance wildlife illustrator while she and Esme carefully, tenderly, explored their relationship. They took things slowly at first, coffee dates that became dinner dates, long walks through the campus botanical garden, quiet evenings in Esme's apartment sharing books and conversation. They were discreet but not secretive, professional in public settings but increasingly affectionate in private ones. The age difference that had seemed so insurmountable began to fade in importance as they discovered the depth of their intellectual and emotional compatibility. Harper's youth brought energy and optimism to Esme's more measured approach to life, while Esme's experience provided grounding and wisdom to Harper's artistic passion. I keep waiting for people to stare, Esme confessed one evening as they walked, hand in hand through the quiet downtown area, for the whispers and judgment. And, Harper prompted gently, and mostly no one seems to care. Or if they do, they're keeping it to themselves. Harper squeezed her hand. You know what I think? I think you built up this idea of what other people's reactions would be because you were fighting your own internal judgment. You were so convinced that what we had was wrong that you projected that belief onto everyone else. It was a wise observation from someone Esme had initially dismissed as too young to understand complexity. Harper's emotional intelligence had been one of her most surprising discoveries. The way she could cut through surface concerns to the heart of matters. The gentle way she helped Esme examine her own motivations. The first real test came in May, when the library held its annual spring gala. Esme had been attending alone for years, representing the institution with professional dignity. This year, Harper would be her date. Are you sure you're ready for this? Esme asked as she adjusted Harper's necklace, a delicate silver piece, with a small bird pendant that Harper had chosen specifically for the evening. The question is, are you ready? Harper replied, studying Esme's reflection in the mirror. Esme wore an elegant burgundy dress that brought out the silver in her hair, and Harper's eyes held nothing but admiration. The gala was held in the university's historic ballroom, a space that had hosted countless academic celebrations over the decades. As they entered together, Esme felt eyes turning toward them, but not with the censure she had expected. If anything, people seemed pleased to see her with a companion, happy that the library's dedicated head librarian had found someone special. Miss Gray, Dr. Patricia Reeves, the university president, approached with a warm smile. I'm so glad you could join us, and please, introduce me to your lovely companion. Dr. Reeves, this is Harper Walker. Harper, Dr. Reeves. Ah, the artist behind our magnificent mural. I've heard wonderful things about your work, Miss Walker. As Harper engaged in conversation with Dr. Reeves, discussing her future plans and current projects, Esme felt a surge of pride. Harper held her own beautifully in academic circles, her intelligence and passion evident to anyone who spoke with. Her dot later, as they danced slowly to the string quartet's rendition of classic standards, Harper whispered in Esme's ear, "See, the world didn't end." Esme laughed, surprising herself with the sound of pure joy. "No, it didn't. In fact, I think it might just be beginning." Astra's summer brought deepening intimacy and growing confidence in their relationship. Harper's art continued to flourish, influenced by her connection to Esme and the natural world around them. She began a new series of paintings exploring partnership and nature-mated pairs of various bird species, each piece capturing how different creatures express devotion. "I want to capture what we have," she explained to Esme one afternoon. "The way love can exist between beings who are different but complementary." The resulting portrait of Esme showed her surrounded by books, silver hair catching afternoon light through library windows. It was more than a portrait. It was a love letter rendered in oil paint, capturing something essential about her spirit. "Is that really how you see me?" Esme asked when Harper revealed the finished painting. "Beautiful, wise, strong. A guardian of precious things." As their first anniversary approached, they began making plans for Harper's graduate school journey. The conversation was interrupted by Dr. Martinez, Harper's former professor. "Harper, I've been advocating for a new position at the university, an artist in residence program focused on scientific illustration. The funding came through, and I'd like you to consider applying." Harper nearly spilled her coffee. "A position here? At Whitmore? Teaching responsibilities would be minimal. The rest of your time would be devoted to your artistic practice, creating pieces for the university's collections and collaborative projects." After Dr. Martinez left, they processed the unexpected development. "A year ago," Harper said finally, "I thought my only path forward meant leaving you behind. Now the universe seems to be conspiring to keep us together." "I want a life with you," Harper replied simply. "Everything else is just details." Asterisk. And so, my dear listeners, we come to the end of our story, though perhaps it would be more accurate to say we come to a new beginning. 2 years later, as autumn painted the campus in gold and crimson, the Whitmore University Library hosted an exhibition, Guardians and Guides, The Art of Harper Walker. The centerpiece was a large canvas showing two women in a library setting, one silver-haired and elegant, the other young and vibrant, clearly in love. The painting was titled, "Love Recognizes No Boundaries." At the opening reception, Esme stood beside Harper as she spoke to admirers. Harper had grown into her role as artist in residence with grace, creating works that bridge scientific observation and emotional truth. "You know," Esme said as they walked home, "I never thanked you properly." "For what?" "For being persistent. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. For refusing to let my fear be the final word in our story." Harper stopped under a street lamp. "Esme Gray, you taught me that love isn't just about feeling, it's about choosing. Every day, you choose to be brave." They kissed there under the streetlight, two women who had found not just romance, but recognition. The kind that whispers, "Here is home." She had rejected Harper 5 times, but Harper had never stopped believing that love could find a way. And in the end, love had found a way. The university had accepted their relationship with surprising ease. More than external acceptance, they had found internal peace. The age difference now simply added richness to their relationship. "I have something to tell you," Harper said as they climbed the steps to their apartment. "The Metropolitan Museum of Natural History wants to commission a series for their new bird hall. They want me to bring a research consultant with expertise in historical ornithological texts." Understanding dawned on Esme's face. "They want both of us." That night, as they lay together, Esme marveled at how her life had transformed. 2 years ago, she had been defined by routine and caution. Now she was planning an adventure in New York City with the woman she loved. "Are you scared?" Harper whispered, terrified and exhilarated. "That's exactly what love is supposed to feel like." Asterisk. So ends our tale, dear listeners. Esmond Harper's journey reminds us that love operates by its own mysterious laws. Their story is one of 5 rejections that became one beautiful acceptance, about the persistence of love in the face of fear dawn in a world that tells us there is only one acceptable path to love. They chose to write their own story. They discovered what the birds have always known, that love is about finding the courage to soar together into uncharted skies. Remember this story when fear whispers that love is too risky? Remember that the heart recognizes what the mind may. Take time to understand Dot, for in the end, love truly recognizes no boundaries except the ones we refuse to tear down.